Do you ever wonder how to build psychological safety in your classroom, in your groups, in your training, or even in your meeting? Welcome. This is what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about what psychological safety is and how it can help with group engagement, inclusion, sense of belonging in your groups. Can help on making decisions, moving the needle forward, right? Circling back and getting things done. Psychological safety is the key. So we're going to talk about how do you establish psychological safety and all you need to know, tips, tricks, and strategies. So join me. If you're the first time here, welcome. My name is Dr. Kortney Peagram, and I am the host of The Ordinary Professor. I do all things executive coaching, facilitation, feelings, social skills. Think EQ 2.0 in real life. I'm the how-to psychologist. Okay, let's talk about psychological safety. If I could say it, it helps, right? I was actually, I'm going to be a little braggalicious, for a second. I was voted Professor of the Year at my university. And the reason I'm explaining this, there's a story behind it. When they do the announcement, right, so students come on video and they talk about why the professor deserves the award. And through my 3 videos was all about psychological safety, how the students had never heard about it and how they understood safety in the classroom, safety in the workplace. And it was like an aha moment for me because I teach that because I do anti-harassment work. I do all these sometimes very, very dark cases on sexual harassment, workplace harassment, because that's part of my background. I won't go too much into that. But I have about 15 years of experience. And I'm Title IX trained. I do big cases on harassment, and so I come in as a consultant or a coach, and I do remediation practices and action planning. So that's part of a little of what I do, and so I have a lot of information and background on that. And so the opposite of getting to that point is establishing psychological safety. And so let's talk about what it is. So psychological safety is the ability to show up as yourself, to ask questions, to feel safe, to be able to ask for help and not feel that you're being blamed, judged, ostracized. It's the ability to show up and feel like I belong here, I'm valued. So other ways to say it, I am seen and I am heard in this workplace. I am seen, I am heard in this classroom. Now, how do you establish it, right? So just like any safety compliance, it's really important to have rules of operation. So here's what I do. First, any class or any meeting, I create table tents or name tents. And so let's go classroom first. What I do is I have the students put their first name, and then I give myself a few weeks to learn all their names. I color code things because that's how my brain works, so it's easier for me to remember. And also, typically, even in meetings, people usually always sit in the same spot. So same spot, same color, same name, boom, that's my formula. I remember names. Now, remembering names is the first component to psychological safety. As a position of authority, right? As a professor, as a boss, as a supervisor, as a facilitator, you knowing the people's names is critical. Knowing them ahead of time, knowing how to pronounce them, knowing where people sit, and using their names as frequently as you can empowers you and them. They feel heard, they feel seen. They are no longer a number. They are part of the identity of the group. Okay? So learning people's name is critical. Now, the other thing that I do with these table tents is when you flip them over and you open them up, I have them write 3 things. So for my students and even my meetings, right? Especially if it's a conflict management or conflict resolution meeting, I do that. 3 things I need to know, right? That maybe you don't want to announce in the meeting or in the group, but would be important for me to know. As a professor, it could be I struggle with reading, I don't do well on tests, I'm introverted, I am terrified of public speaking, I work 2 jobs, take care of my parents, I'm a transfer student, this is my first day here. Those are really important for me to know so that I can be aware of who is that person. And what are some things that they don't want to announce to the group, but is really helpful for me to know. Now, if it was a meeting or let's say a workshop, it could be I'm new to the company. I just transferred to a different department. I'm leaving in a week. So these things help me because I collect them. So say I'm having a full day session. During lunch, I collect all the name tents and I read through them, right? Make notes, make sure I know Bob, Larry, Craig, like Sandra, like where everyone is, so that I can really figure out, okay, who are these people and what do I need to know about them for the afternoon session. If it's my class, after every class I go through and I read through them and I make sure that I remember, like, what does Brian have to say? What is Johanna going through? What is Joelle going through? Like, so I know that if, let's say, I don't know, Brian's late. Well, I know that Brian is taking care of his family and he's working 2 jobs, so I'm not going to be like giving Brian a hard time, like, especially it's just a few times. If it's consistent, I might have a conversation. But just me knowing that helps him walk into the classroom a little less stress. Because when you're stressed and overwhelmed, you are not listening, you are shut down, and you're not learning. So why come to the meeting or why come to class, right? Just turn around. And that's sometimes the mentality. And so we're thinking about like student retention and employee retention. It's like, how are we welcoming people when they show up? Okay. So first of all, just the names and 3 things. Now, secondly, welcoming people. What's critical is how you welcome them. So I have a rule of thumb. I mean, some professors feel differently about this and, choose your own adventure. I do not shame anyone for showing up late. First of all, I start my classes all 5 minutes after. Here's why. First of all, if you've been at my university, parking. Oof, it's just really hard. So they're struggling to find parking. They're running late. They might have like just practice ran late or they have something. So I want to give them that 5 minutes. Get settled. Sit down. Go to the restroom. Get your water. Get your coffee. Get settled, right? So I give them that 5 minute. Get on your phone. Get all your social media stuff done right in that 5 minutes. I do not care. You have 5 minutes. And I kind of show up between those 5 minutes. I set myself up. Also, I'm passing over the table tents or the name tents. I'll get that straight at one point. And so with that, then I can like practice names and like I'm making eye contact with students. I'm saying hi. I'm like, hey, Jennifer, how you doing? Natalie, good to see you, right? I'm welcoming them in individually, like versus a group before I start. So then we start, okay? And I know there's some professors that like don't like the 5 minute late. And so, like I said, choose your own adventure, right? Take what you need. It's fine. But what it does for me is I have the highest rate of retention, student attendance, and I just don't think it's me. I think it's my process and my policies. First of all, if they're running more than 5 minutes late, they just have to text me. And I won't even say anything, right? And so it's just to get, the only reason, it's not because I want them to know what, it's for them to get used to like, hey, when you're supposed to be at work, you're supposed to be at work. If something happens, you need to let your boss know, right? Communication. Now, number 2 is like, if they show up late, I don't call them out. I like just say hi to him. Or I'll even actually, I'll be like, hey, welcome, come on in, we just started, right? Like very welcoming. I acknowledge them, right? Or I say, take your time, don't worry, I'll catch you up. We're just starting, right? So that's what I kind of do to welcome the students. Now, if it's in a meeting, right, it's a little different, right? So if you're started, be like, let's say Jerry shows up late. So I'd be like, hey, Jerry, we're about to start on some of the objectives of our meeting. Why don't you just take a quick look at the agenda, get yourself settled. I'll catch you up. I'm going to get them started on the first discussion or whatever I'm doing, okay? Now, here's the other thing I do. An icebreaker right in the beginning also sets the tone and energy for the rest of the meeting, workshop, or class. So I do something in my classrooms that can be seen as controversial. It's not, okay? It's totally fine. So I remember when I like semi-viral on TikTok, it was like, I can't believe you do that. I would drop your class. I'm like, listen, buddy, no one has. No one's dropped my class because of this. Because it's the setup. So what I do is on my first class, I have them get settled. I say, this is going to be totally different than you've ever done. This is not a lecture-based class. I am training you to get a job, to get an internship, to be career ready. So everything I'm doing has a purpose and meaning for later. Now, I set it up. I explain what I do. I said, every class we will do this. And there's a question on the midterm and the final about it. So then they know, like, they want to get a good grade, so they're going to be listening. So they have to learn 10 people's names and something about them by the midterm. 10, okay? Sometimes I do 15 if I'm being extra, like, challenging. Or my class is really spicy. Like, I'm like, are you 15, okay? Let's just say my business management class, they, like, push me, and I will explain why. Now, in that, so they have to then get up, and the first 5, like, say it's like my class starts at 1. At 1:05, I say, okay, everybody up, and go introduce yourself to 3 different people. So I'm going to do 5. And I give an example. Hi, my name is Dr. Peagram. I like long walks in the sunlight. Hi, my name is Dr. Peagram. I love Starbucks. Venti, like Americano is mine. Like, so I give like silly examples as they're standing up to kind of like release the mood. And so they all have to get up and just introduce themselves to 3 people. Now I do have passes, which I explain what is an emotional pass. Having a bad day, you can stay seated. I do not force people to stand up. However, if it's repetitive, we have to talk about it. And I say, here's my reasoning. At work, like you might just be able to zoom to your cube, right? But you zooming to your cube, not acknowledging like Sally, not saying hey to Maria, not like that chit chat, those interactions is what we like to develop, and we want to work on those because those are social skills and they help, right? So you don't always have to do it, but they help to get more comfortable. Now, here's the thing. Most students are uncomfortable. They will sit side by side. They don't even know who's sitting beside them the entire semester, right? That's not helpful because who'd know that maybe Aaron right here is going to be the next executive director somewhere. This one here, like let's say Alex, right? She's going to be a financial VP at a big firm, right? So me knowing these two, super helpful for my career, right? We don't know what people will be in 3, 5, 10 years, right? So get to know your neighbors, right? And so just by learning each other's names, super helpful. Also, when group work happens, they don't get lost in who are they working with. They already know it. So I force them on the midterm, and then the final, I do something a little different. They have to like know maybe 10 other people or something like that. So I create this narrative so they're learning different people. I usually have like about 20 or 30 students in my class. Now, just that setup, then it's just a thing they have to do. And I said, it might be painful for some of you, but it's like 2 minutes, right? And I always say 2 minutes. You know what? Most of my classes, people are yapping for like 5 minutes. I'm like, good, great. I get time to set up. I can watch it. I can hear some of the stuff and I love it. Like, oh, hey Logan, how's this going? Or like, hey, I heard you went abroad. Like, I'm thinking about it. The conversations are glowing. They're actually talking about real stuff about each other and they're getting to know each other. They don't realize they're building psychological safety, right? Just by chit chat. It's beautiful. So I do teach some classes that are a little more on like the deeper side. Like I teach diversity for businesses, and the textbook is very dry. And so we actually have to do a lot of discussions, and like we bring in social media, technology, globalization. We bring in all the things, right? It can be really intense. So I have to have a high rate of psychological safety, right? And I also have to always share my opinion is not what counts. I am a facilitator in this class, right? I am neutral. Now, students might have opinions and stuff, and then I will moderate and like mediate that. But I have to have a really high psychological safety to have these discussions and do some of these activities, right? We do some really deep activities because I want them to be prepared for the workplace. Not that they do this in the workplace, right? But they're going to come across challenges and they need to know how to act, how to react, what to do, and simulation's the best way to experience it, right? Because your brain's like, oh, I already did this thing, right? I know what to do. So I do a lot of simulations and activities in my classroom, so I have to have a high rate of psychological safety. So that first interaction, like that first 5 minutes, is great. Also brings the energy up in the room. I don't know if you've ever had a class at 1 o'clock or a training, you're like, okay, it's night for everyone. They're all going to fall asleep. Now that's important to build psychological safety. Get them up and moving, right? Okay. Next, to build psychological safety, you need to know them as a facilitator, as a professor. You need to get to know your students. Not just their names, but maybe what their major are, what they're interested in, like, and always like build that dialogue and conversation, right? If it's as a group or as individuals. Another way to develop psychological safety is structure, consistency, and repetition. Okay, I train it in all my classes, especially when it comes to like building emotional safety, physical safety. To increase emotional intelligence, you need structure, repetition, and consistency, right? Look it up. Now, why? Because I am a creative genius. Let's just say that. Okay. If you ever worked for me or if you're my intern, right? You know that I will have this idea, right? And it's not quite formulated. And then I'll be like, okay, so let's do this and this and this. And then next time I'm like, okay, scrap it all. We're doing this. And then I go this direction. However, whatever my brain is doing, that's the creative juices just going and it flows. Like I just love it. I love how I come up with ideas. My activities are all based, but most of the time it's because they're processing and they're not really ready to form until like go time. Not ideal for some situations, but here's how I do manage it so my students don't feel that creative chaos in the classroom. My classes are all structured, right? So we start off with that first 5 minutes, okay? And then I go in and I go through what we're learning for the day, what we're learning for the week, what is the assignment. And then I do either a video, snapshot of a lecture, right? Key terms to learn, right? And then I go into an activity, okay? Now, if I go directly into an activity, I'll tell them like, okay, so we're going to move into the activity because it'll take all class. And then through the activity, I'll bring up like the terminologies we need to learn. I'll start pulling in stuff, right? But I create like this agenda so they know where we're going, structure. Now, my classes are all the same. Like if you're in my business management to my power and influence, regardless, they are the same, okay? That's critical. And so that is the consistency. So you know you got me, this is what's going to happen, okay? Now, the repetition is I repeat instructions verbally, through video, right, written, so that they have different ways of accessing the information so they feel safe. They don't feel like they constantly have to be on and like they can't ask questions, right? No, because there's different ways to find the information. So that is another important thing. Lastly, I create a contact sheet so that everyone has access to each other's information in case they need to reach out, in case they miss class, in place. So there's multiple opportunities for them to reach out either to me or to a peer, okay? Now it works the same in a company. Having a contact list for the employees to like know who to contact when things happen is critical. Last but not least, I do this in my classes so that they're career ready, okay? I create PTO and sick days. So that could bring a lot of issues. So in my policies, in my syllabus, I create like a whole page of policies of what you can and cannot do, okay? So there's 2 things then. And then I create PTO days, so paid time off. So students can use that. Each class is 10 points. You miss a class, you lose 10 points. You use your PTO, you don't lose the point, but you have to put in a professional email. And you have to do it 24 hours before because you have to request for the PTO to be approved. Workplace best practices. As college students, they're already practicing it. So when they enter the workplace, like, oh yeah, I need to put in my PTO. They know the drill. Now, sick days is different, right? And I actually put for mental health, and physical illness. So they have 2 sick days. They just have to, they can text me that, right, if they're not feeling well. And then they just have to put in an email after because then I rate, like, because each point, 10 points can add to a lot, right? So they know that process, again, structure, consistency, right, and repetition. So they know that policy and they can, like, they'll use it for the rest of their lives. Okay. Once I go through all the policies in my class, here's one more thing I do that I want you to leverage. It's called the social contract. I do a lot of videos on that, and I want to expand on the social contract because it's beautiful. I wish everyone would do a social contract, right? Have one in your home, have one in your marriage, have one in your department, in your teams, in your classrooms, okay? It's going to help you. So after you go through the policies of the classroom or the policies of the organization, then you have a meeting and you say, let's build a social contract. You decide the categories you want your social contract. So let's take classes. I do academics, social interaction, and then fun. I've done social contracts for businesses. We do social interactions, right? Performance, and then fun. Pick your categories. Now, you have people in subgroups get together and they come up with 3 or 5 items per category of what they want for performance, academics, for social interaction. And then after that, the small groups go back and present to the large group and we vote as a group. And it has to align with the policies. They can't go against it, right? They can't break a policy because those are the policies, but it has to add in, like, a level of engagement, inclusion, right? Or for them to be successful, for your employees or your students to be successful. And so then you vote on it and you pick, so there should be about 15 items that get voted on your social contract. Bullet point, right? Examples could be for students, drop the lowest quiz grade. I don't have a problem, like, done, okay? They want more PTO, goes against the policy, can't do it, right? So C, right? So then we go for social interaction. They need to show up and they actually agreed that they all need to speak to each other. They need to be respectful, right? Done, approved, right? And then the fun one is when they get creative. And why I love this for businesses and classrooms, these social contracts, is they get to be like I didn't know we could do that. We can ask for this? I'm like, sure. You want to bring food? 100%. You want to have class outside when it's nice out? Who wouldn't? They get surprised. So that's the expansion of the mind. We don't know what we don't know until we start to be curious, okay? More curiosity, more psychological safety. Hand in hand. Okay, so that's a wrap of how I build psychological safety in the classroom. If you like what I have to share and you want to join me on this wild adventure of learning, growing with the Ordinary Professor, subscribe, okay? Because I want to be here for you because I know you got this. So take care, and I'll see you on the next adventure. Bye.